Are you struggling in your faith? Are you pretending you're happy but stuck in a spiritual rut? Are you tired of listening to famous pastors and preachers who make it sound so easy? Welcome to Broken Catholic, the #1 Protestant and Catholic voice in America. I talk about the important things that nobody else is talking about, like how to align with God's plan for your life, because I believe this is where 90% of Christians get stuck. And I tackle the negative self-talk that we all secretly struggle with but won't admit. My guests are brave Protestants and Catholics who share their struggles, their fears, and their daily holy habits that help them win in their spiritual lives. I'm your host, your coach, your friend, Joseph Warren. I'm also a broken Catholic and former atheist, and a spiritual coach to Christian business owners and CEOs who are married with children. This show was created for you, the broken Catholic who's pushing to get your spouse, your kids, and yourself to heaven. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you're just one surrender prayer away. Today, my featured guest is Becky Ellis. She was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. At the age of 12, her and her mother began volunteering for a disability ministry called Joni and Friends. Every summer, the ministry holds family camps for the entire family, touched by special needs. It was this summer, back in 1998, that Becky found a love for serving the community, and she found herself returning every summer to volunteer. In 2012, Becky joined the ministry on staff and currently serves as the Senior Area Director for the Joni and Friends Texas office. You can find her at joniandfriends.org/Texas, joniandfriends.org/Texas. Becky, welcome to Broken Catholic, the #1 podcast on iTunes for Protestants and Catholics. Go ahead and fill in some of the gaps in that intro, would you?
Yes, thank you so much, Joseph. I'm glad to be here. Like you said, Joni and Friends has had a huge impact on my life. Born and raised in Dallas, under great Christian parents, grew up going to a church, a non-denominational church. And it was when I was 12 years old that we were invited to a camp to serve families affected by disability. Well, being a 12-year-old, I really didn't want to go, but my mom and I signed up and we went, and it was that summer that our lives were changed. And we really, or I really saw the beauty behind serving others, getting out of your bubble at a young age. I was very fortunate to my mom for that. And so after that, continued to go back to camp every year and serve through college. And after getting married, told my husband, hey, sorry, I am out of pocket this week every year. If you want to come, love that. And then it was
So
in 2000.
just to clarify, when you got married, like
Yeah.
part of the deal of him marrying you was, hey, ministry is very much a part of my life, and this specific ministry has my heart. So just know you're getting the whole package deal. Is that correct?
Whole package deal. Yes. And he was on board with that, luckily. So
That's so awesome. All right. So before we get into your story, deep into it, share something personal about you that very few people in your business life actually know.
Yeah. Well, just recently, we welcomed our second child into our family, and another girl. So we have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. And really, through that and these times of being in a pandemic, something that I have really struggled with is just anxiety, and just that comes with motherhood, juggling a full-time job, trying to be a mom guilt, wife guilt, all the things that you can get done, all the things that you can't get done. And sometimes that anxiety can be paralyzing, to where I don't know where to begin my day. And if I don't start it in the Word, because we've got to clean up the oatmeal spill on the floor before getting ready for work, before packing the bags to get out the door, then my day doesn't start off on the right foot. And so, life is ever evolving, and keeping that consistent quiet time with the Lord has been the one thing that will get you through it. Nothing else. And so when there are big life changes like a newborn baby, sometimes they can disrupt that, and the devil wants to take hold of that. And so it really is, it does take diligence and discipline to set that time, whether it be a new normal, morning time, nighttime, but making sure that you have that time, that personal one-on-one relationship with the Lord that's strengthened through those quiet times, whatever they look like.
That is so good. I'm so glad you went there. And first off, let me acknowledge you for being vulnerable and transparent with battling anxiety and stress and life, just the challenges of life and motherhood, but also working full time simultaneously. And then on top of it, all the fear mongering of the pandemic that's being shoved at us constantly, just really throwing lighter fluid or gasoline on these fires that we already have of just life. And so many listeners right now struggle with this. And I know in the beginning of the pandemic, I was struggling with this big time. And I was just feeling so out of place. And like all of a sudden I had purpose and then I didn't. Like the next day I didn't. Like, what the bleep? Where did it go? Yeah. It's not like you lose purpose, but the feelings became so powerful. The feelings of anxiety. And I just felt myself getting depressed for no good reason because my life is so blessed and awesome and fantastic. But feelings and emotions are very powerful liars, I think. Sometimes they're liars and the enemy will use them. And going back to your point, what I did, BC Nation, is I jumped into the word and I specifically targeted the things I was wrestling with. And the lie that kept coming up for me was disappointment. I had a whole series of disappointments in the past year or two. And the enemy was speaking that lie into me, like nothing's going to work out. Why even try? You might as well quit. You look at all these things that didn't work out the way you wanted, et cetera, right? And what I did was I Googled disappointment in the Bible, quote, disappointment in the Bible. And it came up with all Bible verses that speak to disappointment. And what I did is I spoke those verses. I created a list of 13 of my favorite Bible verses that targeted disappointment as an example. And obviously you can use whatever it is you're struggling with. And when I spoke them out loud every single morning for 5 minutes, I just read those Bible verses out loud. I spoke God's truth into the enemy's lie. And they dissipated immediately. And then I started my day powerfully. And after a week or two of doing that, those lies just totally permanently just went away. So I don't know if that contributes to you, Becky, personally, or to you, BC Nation, but that is a very specific holy habit or spiritual strategy that you can do right now during this pandemic. What shows up for you in that, Becky?
That reminds me of a practice that my husband and I used to do, and I've started to integrate with my 3-year-old. Based on one of my favorite Bible verses, which is always be joyful, pray without ceasing, be thankful in all circumstances. And how we would start the day. My husband, years ago, he used to have an hour-long commute. And so sometimes he would be up and out the door before I would see him. But we would always text a handful of things that we were grateful for that day. Something about each other, something physical like hot water, something about the Lord, and something personally. And we would simply just, in the text, number 1, I'm thankful for my washing machine this morning. Number 2, I'm thankful for your kindness to me, and so on and so forth. And when you can live in that state of gratitude, I think it continues to keep things in perspective, and just recognizing all that the Lord has blessed us with, speaking it out, having an accountability partner, teaching it to your young ones, your kids at a young age, is a beautiful thing.
So your 3-year-old daughter, like she says the things that she's grateful for, like every morning with you? Is that?
Well, it's usually at bedtime. We talk about what we're grateful for, and it could be something in her bed, like a stuffed animal. It could be what I have just said. There's a lot of repeating, and so she's learning. It hasn't necessarily been that she has picked something out that she truly is grateful for, but I think just the practice of it, she'll get there.
That's so good. Yeah, her brain's still forming, so she only looks at what she can see, right? Yeah. What's right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, let's go to Joni and Friends, the organization you work with. What inspired you? I know the founder, Joni, has quite an inspirational story.
Yes.
Would you be willing to share the brief version of that really touched your heart?
Yes, I'd love to. So Joni was a 17-year-old young athletic girl when she took a dive into the Chesapeake Bay, broke her neck, and became a quadriplegic. It was in her time in the hospital after that where she went through a state of depression, and she wanted to take her life, but she could not because she couldn't use her arms. She had no way of doing it. Her friends weren't going to do it for her, but she had an army of friends and family that surrounded her and brought the word to her. She knew about the Lord before the accident, but she would even say she wasn't, walking in it. Um, but it was those friends that really instilled hope in her through her accident. So years later, she founded the ministry of Joni and Friends, wanting to reach out to families living in despair under the weight of disability. And there is so much that comes with our ministry. But Joni is gosh, she is over 50 years in a wheelchair now. She is has defeated cancer. Is it 2 or 3 times? She has just recently defeated COVID, and she is just thriving. She is a hero of the faith. And it's through her leadership that this ministry, standing on 40 plus years, has thrived all across the world to reach families, to provide hope through the hardships that they're living in.
Wow. What's it like for you? Maybe the first time. What was it like for you the first time you met Joni? And you're dealing with your own little crises of life. We all have them, struggles, challenges. And then you see this young lady, quadriplegic, in a wheelchair, prison, who's possibly not complaining, but rather thriving and striving, just not giving up, and out inspiring others to look at their hardship differently and to draw power from their pain, so to speak. What was that like for you the first time you met her?
Well, that was over 20 years ago for me. But I do remember so she's also an artist, and she paints with a paintbrush in her mouth, and she can write and draw with a pen in her mouth. And so I remember watching her sign a book for us. Somebody was holding the book in front of her, and she had the pen in her mouth, and she has her classic signature that many of you may have seen. And it was just so inspiring to know that she doesn't have the use of her arms. Here she is, joyful, grateful, and doing what she can with what the Lord has blessed her with. Who am I as a 12-year-old to complain or whine about, the small things in life? And that really impacted me at a young age, to just grab life as God has given it to us, to be grateful for what He has given us, how He's given it to us, and serve Him, whether that be through volunteering and serving and loving others, whether that be through being a mom at home with young kids that are screaming and crying, whether that be through your job. And so she definitely inspired me and continues to inspire me in that way.
Wow. So good. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any stories or examples of individuals that you've helped, you personally have witnessed their stories, maybe a before and after story, a comeback story of people that you volunteered with, worked with, where you just saw a massive hardship in their life and somehow they were able to really embrace what God gave them, lean into it rather than run from it, and turn it into something bigger or greater?
Yeah. I mean, there are so many stories through the outreaches that we have and the families that we serve. The camp that we do, we hear a lot of times the families that come that is the first, vacation that they've had since their 8-year-old boy with autism was born, because they can't leave their house, or that was the first time that they've ever felt accepted. One of my not favorite families, but just a longtime family and friend of the ministry. They have 5 kids. And 2 of their girls have a very rare disorder called trisomy 16p. And their first daughter was born with this rare disorder. And they were told, it was 1 in a million and they won't live, past the age of 2. Well, a couple years later, they got pregnant, had another daughter with the exact same disability. And the wife shares that when they were leaving the doctor and they had just told him this diagnosis, she says, what an honor that we get to do this again, that God would bless us with this again. And so years later, I believe the girls who are, I want to say they're 12 and 10, so they have surpassed the age of 2, come to our family retreats, and they will say that it's the first time they've walked into the dining hall and not been stared at. It's the first time they've sat down for a meal and not been the loudest ones in the room. It's the first time that a mom or a dad can sit down and say, me too. I understand. We're dealing with the same thing. And just having that community around you of someone that gets it and that can sit with you in the hardship, in the pain. Uh, it is just so beautiful to see these marriages be restored, for hope to be restored. One of the my favorite quotes from Joni is, "God permits what He hates to accomplish that which He loves," and we see that a lot in our outreaches. There is so much pain in disability, in the hardships, and why? That question, we hear that all the time. Why has God permitted this? Why did God permit this accident uh, of Johnny so many years ago to accomplish that which He loves? And we may not understand it, but we know that we are a part of His plan.
Mm. This hits home personally. One of my sisters has an autistic son, very extreme autism, and violent, violent. And it's very difficult to love a violent child. He's now at age 14, I want to say, or 15. His strength has surpassed his parents. Overly strong. His mom has had to call the police on her own son multiple times, and it took 4 police officers to contain him. That kind of strength. And the few times that I have visited recently, I felt like there was a darkness present in the home, right? This spirit of violence in this innocent child, this boy who didn't choose that. It's just something born with. And I know for me personally, I didn't feel comfortable around it. I wanted to get away from it and go back to my normal life because that was abnormal. But yet my sister had to deal with that every single day, 24 hours a day. To me, that occurs as such a hopeless situation. Yet my sister has thrived through it. It has drawn her closer to her Heavenly Father than anyone could imagine. She's joyful. She's happy. She thanks God for her son. When I speak with her, she doesn't complain about her challenges or struggles. She talks about the blessings and the things God is doing in her life with her other kids, with him as well. And I just look at that and I'm like, just blown away. Like, she's my hero. Like, how does someone sustain that kind of chronic suffering for that long? I don't think I'm capable of it, to be honest with you. But then again, only God knows. What shows up in you when you see those hopeless situations? What do you battle in yourself? Or what does God bring to the surface about you?
That's a great question. I think a lot of times, like you said, it made you uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with disability because it is not, quote unquote, the normal, or we may not see it. But the disability community is the most unchurched population in the world. Over 1 billion people in the world are impacted by disability. And, when I say disability, I think a lot of people think wheelchair or autism, but it could be post-traumatic stress. It could be a trauma from childhood. It could be a veteran returning home from a battlefield. And I think what it brings out in me is a desire to not show the world, but just to reach out to those families and provide them with community because they need it. One of the things that I think this pandemic has brought about is everyone has experienced isolation, especially in the beginning. And that is not abnormal for our families. That is normal for our families impacted by disability to experience that isolation, to experience the fear of catching a common cold, and it could be life ending. And so, I'm grateful that the pandemic has brought about that knowledge, because that is what our families deal with every day. And if we can realize that and be more sympathetic to that, we could reach a lot more families through our church, through our community of those families that are living in isolation, that are living hopeless lives. And we can do something about that to change that.
I really get what you're saying there, Becky. it's difficult for us to relate to other people when we haven't been through their experience. And I remember I used to look at people with addiction as weaker individuals, people without discipline. Why can't you just control that thing that's not working, that's hurting people around you? You're obviously a weaker person. That's how I used to see it, until God allowed me to experience addiction in one area of my life. And it was the first time in my life that I couldn't stop doing the poor behavior. I had no control and a complete sense of powerlessness, which I had never experienced before in my life. And it wasn't a lack of effort or desire to stop. There was chemical changes that I experienced in my body, no different than an alcoholic. And I couldn't stop. And I thought to myself, God, why'd you allow this? I know I chose through my poor choices. I take responsibility, but why are you allowing this? And then when I stopped asking the why question, because I think why questions are mostly pointless when it comes to God. Why this? Why are there suffering? Why is this guy blue? Like it does is cause us frustration and unsatisfied answers. I started asking what questions, and what are you wanting me to do with this? What are you showing me about me? What is your purpose through this? What would you have me do next? Start asking these what questions. And then I really got present to, and God showed me that he allowed me to experience what other people go through so that I could speak to those other people, not from a place of superiority, but a place of authenticity. Hey, I've been there. I get it. Praise God. I've gotten through it, and I no longer deal with the addiction. It's out of my life. Let me show you how to get out. And it's a completely different perspective. So is that what you're talking about as far as like connecting with people there?
Yes. Yeah. I really believe that some of the most comforting words can be me too. I know I went through that with my first child, as a mom, being up in the middle of the night. You don't know if your baby is eating enough. Texting other people, what am I doing wrong? Or they're crying all the time. But for me personally, for a mom to say, oh my gosh, me too. I went through that too. Let me walk you through what I did. Let me walk you through how the Lord spoke to me in those challenging times. We were made to live in relationship and community. So to have that, to have someone that understands, someone that will listen, and that cares for you and cares with you, a lot of times can bring you out of that despair, out of that addiction, out of whatever it is.
So good. So even though we're in a pandemic, are you seeing more community developing, more Christian community, because the majority of people are now experiencing isolation?
We were seeing community in a different way. So I know as a ministry, we had to shift our outreaches, our in-person outreaches. And so we tried a lot of things virtually. And some of them were great, although they will never replace the in-person camps that we have, or whatever it is, Christmas carnivals. But we were able to reach people we may not have ever reached through, for instance, we did an online drumming class, and we hired Kevin at Drumming Around to come in and do a 45-minute virtual drumming class with our kids living with special needs. And we had one kid with 2 wooden spoons in his hand, drumming on a watermelon in his kitchen. And so it was moments like that we were forced to think out of the box, be creative, and how can we engage the community during this time of isolation? So yes and no. I think we really wanted to go beyond our reach through the virtual world, but we are so ready to get back to our in-person outreaches and community gatherings.
Give me 3 tips or spiritual strategies or techniques, methods that BC Nation can apply in their life right now if, like myself, they know people with disabilities, or people that are different, that are struggling with challenges that make them uncomfortable. What are 3 steps, simple steps, easy steps this week, possibly, that BC Nation could do to engage in community with that individual or that family?
That's a great question. Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind is eye contact. So if you see someone out in the grocery store, at your church that has a disability, a lot of times you'll hear that they are being looked at differently. But to just stop, make eye contact with that person, and even just saying hello. Now, I know it's hard in these times where we're all wearing masks and all you can see is our eyes. Um, but engaging with a simple hello, how's your day, can make the world of a difference instead of just that kind of awkward side glance. Oh gosh, I don't want to look at them and let them think that I'm judging them. Treat them like anybody else that you would pass on your day to day routines.
Okay, got it. Eye contact. And that goes for homeless people as well, right?
Yeah,
Don't just
anyone.
hand them $1 without looking into their eyes.
Yeah.
Remember, Mother Teresa said it very well. She's like, people like, how do you serve people like when they're smelling and stinking and decay on their flesh? And like, it's disgusting. How do you do it? She's like, every single one of them, right? Every person. I'm paraphrasing. I see Jesus in disguise. I'm not giving it to the person. I'm giving it to Jesus.
Mm,
He's just showing up that way.
yeah.
And I would say the same for homeless. All right. So eye contact.
Yeah.
BC Nation, look people in the eye. At least, the mask doesn't cover their eyes. So you have no excuse. Okay. Look them in the eye. What else you got, Becky?
Well, and let me say this before we move on. Don't you find it in such a digital world? Don't you find it hard to make eye contact nowadays?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a discipline, to
Oh.
stop, take the time, look someone in the eye, and have a conversation. So,
Have you
yeah.
ever tried to look someone in the eye as you're speaking?
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I, I don't know if that's a thing for anyone else listening right now, but I caught myself having that thing. I realized that when someone's speaking to me, I look them in the eye. The second my mouth starts moving, I look away
Yes.
and I don't hold my eye contact. I'll glance back at them every 5 seconds, but I don't just hold and speak and look them in the eye as I'm speaking. Why is that? Like, what's going on there? And I really had to take that on and say, that's not right.
Yeah.
Because I'm not communicating to their heart, to their soul. I'm looking up in the air or down at the ground. That's disrespectful. It's rude. It's not connecting. So I took that on and it was so awkward and uncomfortable. I got to tell you, the first week or two, Becky, of just like intentionally hold your eye contact, Joseph, hold your eye contact as you're speaking. And man, with practice, it got better and better. And now I can do it more and more. But it was such a weird experience and I realized I just wasn't connecting with people in a real way.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Eye contact.
Okay.
Got it. Number 2.
Okay. So number 2, I'm going to say awareness. So think about if you're in a wheelchair and you roll up to a church and there's no curb cut, meaning there's no ramp. There's the curb and then there's the door. How are you going to get into that church? And it's the little things. And I recognize stuff like that more now that I have a stroller and I'm pushing around kids. Hello, this is not disability friendly. I can't even get my stroller up into this building. Elevators, stairs, whatever it is, be aware of the little things around you that could prevent someone from going somewhere, therefore instilling more isolation.
So what do we do about it? You,
Oh,
you don't see a ramp at your church. What do you do?
well, let me tell you.
Tell us, Becky. Tell us.
Well, I say that because that is the cornerstone of Joni and Friends is to help equip and mobilize the church worldwide. And so we have resources and curriculum that you can take to your leadership and say, listen, I don't think we're serving the disability community well here. They can't even get in the door. What are we going to do about that? How can someone in a wheelchair feel welcome if they can't even come in the door? And I think you take it to leadership, whoever that may be, whether it's your welcome team or your senior pastor or your connections pastor. Take it to leadership, and that's something also to be aware of. How many people in your church are impacted by disability? Because they're out there. 1 in 5 households have someone living with a disability. So it's not that they don't live in your community; it's that they might not feel welcomed. They might not have the outlets they need in order to attend. And so that is one of the things that Joni and Friends does is to help churches start special needs ministries, help churches welcome people that are impacted by these hardships.
That's awesome. All right. What's your number 3?
Okay, gosh. Okay, so I have eye contact, awareness. My third thing is get involved. And I speak from the heart on that because I was fortunate, blessed that my mom got me involved at age 12. If you have kids out there, and it doesn't have to be volunteering with a disability ministry, but volunteering to serve others, and I'll speak specifically to disability. Uh, it can start as simply as just saying hi to someone in the grocery store, teaching your kids to stop, make that eye contact, and say hello. It could be getting involved in your church's special needs ministry because we know those churches all need volunteers, especially in this day and age as churches begin to go back to in person services. And so get involved, get your kids to use their hands to serve the Lord in whatever way that you can, whether it be feeding the homeless, whether it be serving one-on-one, whether it be, doing a care package on the regular for someone that's overseas or something like that. So get involved would be my third.
Good. Very good. All right. There you have it, BC Nation. Becky Ellis's top 3 steps you can take that are very simple, very doable. Eye contact, look people with disability in the eye, look homeless people in the eye, let them know that you see them, that they're worthy of being looked at, right? Number 2, be aware of some of the basic challenges that they experience that you don't have to, such as getting into a church. And then go to your leadership and bring that to them. Use some of the resources that you can find at joniandfriends.org. And then number 3, get involved. And Becky also challenges you as parents to teach your kids how to get involved, especially for those parents out there. If you have a kid who's going through that age of ungrateful, right? They're just not grateful. They're taking all the blessings in their life for granted. They're taking the gifts and the toys and everything. Especially you get to see this at Christmas time when kids just go through presents like an assembly line. They're just like, that's it? What's next? If you start to see that in your child, take them to a place where people have it much worse. When they see it firsthand, they smell it firsthand. They experience it firsthand, what most of the world lives in. Man, that shifts everything. Take them to a homeless shelter. Feed the homeless, take them to, Joni and Friends, get involved, ask your church ministry. Hey, what do you have that you're doing for disabled people? And just as an adult, get involved in prison ministry. That's something I'm looking to get involved. Obviously there's restrictions right now, but it will lighten up, I'm sure soon, but really serving, these are the things Jesus said we will be judged for on the final judgment. Did you feed me? Did you clothe me? Did you visit me while I was in prison? These are the things. Don't get caught up in the works gospel or, which is it? Are works necessary? Jesus said, you're going to be judged on these things. Like you can't just have incredible faith in Jesus and then neglect his children. You can't. 2 greatest commandments: love God with all your strength, heart, soul, mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. You got to do both, BC Nation. We're speaking with Becky Ellis. She's fantastic, isn't she? You could just feel her loving heart coming through your ears right now through the mic. You can find her at joniandfriends.org/Texas. Becky, anything else you want to share before we jump into my favorite part of the show and then wrap this up?
Yes, I do. So Joni and Friends is not just in Texas. Wherever you're listening, we hope to or might already have a presence. Whether that be an office, whether that be a community of churches and networks, or whether that be a family retreat. So go on our website, plug in your zip code and see where we are, how we can serve you, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a family wanting to get involved in one of our camps. And also we do a lot internationally. We collect wheelchairs locally and we send them to prisons where our inmates refurbish them. And then we ship them overseas and distribute them to kids that have never had a chair before. So if your heart is missions internationally, we've got something for you there. And we also serve the veteran community, those that have been wounded by the visible and invisible wounds of war. So there's so much to Joni and Friends. I hope that you are able to learn more about Joni herself and just how she is such a hero for the faith. And again, reach out to us if we can help serve you in any way.
Fantastic. All right. So, Becky, welcome to my favorite part of the show. Welcome to the confession round. I'm going to ask you 10 quick fire questions. You'll have about 3 seconds to answer each. Don't overthink it. It's just for fun. Okay. Are you ready?
Sure.
What's your favorite thing about God?
His creativity.
Yeah. What's your least favorite thing about God?
Oh gosh. When the answer doesn't quite come when we need it.
Yeah, waiting on the Lord, right?
Waiting, yes.
What are you most afraid of?
Physically, fire.
Got it. Got it. I believe we're all struggling with something at any given moment of our lives. It's just part of the human condition. What are you currently struggling with right now, either professionally or personally?
Yeah, I would say anxiety. Becoming a new mom of two and going back to full-time work. There's just a lot of
Ooh,
anxiety with that.
anxiety for sure. What did you spend way too much time doing this past year?
Oh, I would probably say Netflix.
Darn Netflix.
Yep.
Binge watching. It's your fault, Netflix.
The truth.
The truth. What secret fear do you have about people?
Oh gosh. I am a people pleaser. So I think I would say I fear them not being happy or joyful.
Like letting them down?
Yes. No.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. What do you wish you had learned sooner about God?
Sooner about God, man. I think His grace, which is something that I have been learning over this past year and some devotions I've had time in. So I would say His grace, the depth of it.
Yeah, it's pretty good, pretty deep. What is a new habit that you want to create?
More consistent time in the Word.
Yeah, got it. What's a bad habit you want to break?
Netflix.
Well, I think one's going to lead to the other. What do you think?
Yep, that's a simple answer right there.
That's so funny. Pick 3 words to describe who you are now.
Child of God.
Nice.
A mom in need of grace on the reg. And I would hope to say joyful.
Yeah, I get
Finding joy in the mundane.
that. Pick 3 words to describe who you were before you experienced God in your life.
Selfish. Gosh, these are tough questions. I would say self-righteous. I don't know if those are the same things, but they hit pretty hard to home. And impatient.
Yeah, got it. And last question. If you could come back to life after you died, Becky, look your family and friends in the eye, your husband, your 2 kids, and give them only one piece of advice about everything, life, eternity, all of it, what would you say to them?
That you are loved deeply, more than you will ever know.
It's one of the best answers I've ever gotten. This is what people forget, that they are loved. And it causes a whole lot of problems from there. Yeah. Any final wisdom? What's the one thing you want my listener to know about having a relationship with God versus not?
I'm just going to go back to Johnny's quote that I think says it all, that God permits what He hates to accomplish that which He loves.
For those that He loves. And that's you, BC Nation. Amen. You are loved. Becky, if BC Nation wants to get in touch with you, reach out to you, send you a question, how do they do that?
Sure. You can find me, email me at bellis@johnnyandfriends.org. Or you can find any of our information on the website of Johnny and Friends /Texas.
Awesome. 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 BC Nation. Remember, you are loved this week. That's it. That's all I want you to do. That's your homework assignment this week. Just remember, you are loved. Why? Because God said so. That's it. God said so. Becky Ellis, thank you for being on Broken Catholic. I wish you God's love, peace, and joy in your life, girl.
Thank you, and blessings to you. And may this program go beyond what we could ever imagine.
BC Nation, you cannot show up authentically in your life without building faith in your business. If you want the business side of that conversation, I have another podcast called First 100K, where I interview successful entrepreneurs about how they made their first $100,000, because that's where I believe 90% of you are stuck and you can't break through. Go to first100k.com to find out how. I'm Joseph Warren. You were made for greatness, so stop being a wuss and start being a winner. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you right back here next week.